So if you recall, bodhisattvas are enlightened beings who postpone their nirvana or escape from samsara, the rebirth cycle, and achievement of Buddhahood to help others achieve enlightenment. So they're sort of like guides or teachers. They're distinguished by Buddhas in art by their princely garments. So when we looked at Buddha, we saw that he was not really adorned at all. He wore a monk's robe. He didn't have any jewelry. Very simplistic depiction. Whereas when we look at these bodhisattvas, and they are just decked out in princely garments, jewels, earrings, pearls, long necklaces, armbands, and bracelets. So they are very lavishly dressed. This one wears a striped cloth that covers his lower body. He has a very graceful bending posture. So it's actually kind of hard to see, but here's his face here, because they are pretty damaged today. So here's his face here, here's his body, and he sort of has this kind of S-curve to his posture, almost like he's dancing. He has a very serene gaze, and this portrays his sympathetic attitude. Spiritual power is suggested by his large size compared to the figures around him. So if you look to see the figures around him, like here's another guy over here. I know it's kind of hard to see, but here's his face, and he is much smaller compared to this kind of giant bodhisattva. So we see that use of the hierarchical scale that we saw, or hieratic scale, excuse me, that we saw in the Near East. It is a very naturalistic style. They use outline drawing. This is always a clear part of Indian painting. This helps define their shapes. They also use some tonal gradations in part to create the illusion of a three-dimensional form with lighter tones used for protruding parts like the nose or the brows or the shoulders, chest, and muscles. One of the special achievements of the Gupta period is that bodhisattvas appear divine, yet they are deliberately human at the same time. And here I just have a close-up so you can see maybe a little bit, a little bit better. The Gupta dynasty ended about 500 CE, but the influence of this period continued in religion and art until the mid-10th century. Buddhism was still popular and flourished during the 5th century, but Hinduism becomes more dominant. Okay, so again, I'm not trying to give you a religion lesson. I'm just trying to talk about the very simplistic basics of Hinduism so that we can talk about the art. So Hinduism is a religion that encompasses many related beliefs and innumerable sects. There's no unified sets of practices, texts, or beliefs. There's no founder, no prophets, and no teachers. The origins of Hinduism are a mingling of Vedic beliefs with indigenous local beliefs and practices in about 1500 BCE. There are 3 major Hindu sects, and they draw upon the Vedas and the sacred texts. Technically, Hinduism is monotheistic. There is one God, and his name is Brahma. He is all-knowable, unrecognizable, but what we see when we are, as an outside observer, are looking at Hinduism is we see as all these gods are actually just all different aspects of Brahma. An aspect is like a form or a variation. The ultimate goal of Hinduism is to know Brahma. Hindus worship in the home, community, and in the temple. Each Hindu sect takes a particular deity as supreme. So they worship the manifestations or the deities through rituals, meditation, intense devotion, and this leads to increasing positions in rebirth until you escape samsara, the process of rebirth cycle. Some of the most, what I call the MVP deities, are Vishnu, Shiva or Shiva, and Devi. Devi is the great goddess. These deities have many, 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 many different aspects, and they appear in different forms. Now, Hinduism has a really interesting relationship to art. Art is actually essential to Hinduism. Images serve as the home of a deity when the image is consecrated. So at times the deity can possess the image and live inside of the image. And so the image becomes a way for humans to interact with their deity. So that makes sense why art is so important to Hinduism, to religion in this case. So one of the major Hindu gods is Shiva or Shiva. And Shiva has a wide range of aspects or forms. So I know that Hinduism isn't a huge religion in this area, so just to kind of find a basis for comparison, maybe you can think about like the Virgin Mary. So with the Virgin Mary, she has all these different aspects, like she can be the Virgin Mary of the Rosary, or the Virgin Mary of the Immaculate Conception, or the Virgin Mary of Lima or Guadalupe, or whatever. So we can have these kind of different versions or different aspects of the Virgin Mary. So on a very simplistic level, maybe we can kind of compare that to how Shiva has different aspects. Well, with Shiva, his aspects can be both gentle and wild. When he is the great yogi who dwells in the Himalayas to meditate, he's more gentle. But he can also be the slayer of demons, the cosmic dancer, the dancer who dances to the destruction and recreation of the world. He seems to have kind of a contradictory nature because he can be gentle, but he also can be wild at the same time. But they do this on purpose. This is to make us question reality. The many forms of Shiva can be seen in monumental reliefs in the cave temples of Shiva, carved in the mid-6th century from living rock. In Elephantana off the coast of Bombay in West India. So this cave is unusual because it has 3 entrances. Most cave temples only have 2. And these provide the only source of light. When you walk into this cave, you have this dim, mysterious interior. It's actually a pretty large cave, pretty grand. It's oriented along the east-west axis of the temple, and we have large pillars that are cut from the living rock, and that's what we're looking at here in this image. And they appear to support a low ceiling, but really it's just part of the cave. They have unadorned bases that rises nearly half its total height, and then they're delicately fluted there at the top. They lead to a shrine dedicated to Shiva in the back. Here's just some more images of this temple complex. What we really want to talk about is the eternal Shiva. It's on the south wall of the complex and is this huge bust of Shiva as the eternal Shiva. He embodies not only the creator and the destroyer, but also the maintainer of the cosmos. It doesn't really look that tall from here, but it's actually 18 feet tall, so it's this huge bust sculpture. Now what we can see is we can see 3 heads on one set of broad shoulders. So while we can see 3 heads, so 1, 2, 3, if you're coming to this temple, you're obviously Hindu, you're devoted to Shiva, so you know that 5 heads are actually implied by the sculpture. The 4th one we can't see because it would be in the back, and the 5th one would be on the top. So neither of those are depicted, but we would know that they would be there. And this is expressing Shiva's 5-fold nature. Oops. His 5-fold nature. And his 5-fold nature is the back one would represent the protector. The left shoulder would be the creator. The creator would have feminine features, and so over on the side, we have feminine features and have a blissful softness, enhanced by pearls and flowers. And in the hair, and she would have lotus buds in her hand. Now the destroyer is over the right shoulder, and that's this guy right here. And he has snakes around his neck. So maybe you can actually see also some snakes in his hair. And maybe you can see that he's holding a cobra here in his hand here. And then here you can see this more feminine version of Shiva there a little bit better too. So here he is over here, this destroyer aspect, holding the snake. And he has this kind of hooked nose and this mustache, and he's just meant to look kind of sinister and evil. The obscure is in the front, and he is that central image, and he is Shiva, the great god, detached and otherworldly and supreme and serene, the beneficent one. And then at the top, which of course we can't see because it doesn't exist, would be the obscure, would be the, the releaser. Each wear a huge crown, which you can see in that image. So each wear these huge crowns with intricately carved jewels and designs. The faces taken together express the contradictory nature of the divine, which gathers up and transcends all opposites. Now originally it would have been painted, and it would have been painted very vibrantly.